back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by Basketball Society. Normally, I have my partner in crime, my partner in women's basketball crime, my brother in Christ, founder of Basketball Society, Martin Sorius, with me. But instead, I've got another guy who loves women's basketball so much so that he and I actually are going to the Big Ten tournament this week. We are very excited. Our guy, friend of the show, contributor to the show in more ways than one, Dr. Not Dr. Dan Thompson, my guy. How are we feeling?
I'm wonderful. It's been a strenuous Big Ten season for a lot of these teams, but here we are. The tournament is in 2 days.
It is. Very excited. Very excited. How's the weather up there? Because it's snowing down here again.
I woke up to like a half inch of ice on my car this morning.
Oh, okay.
So we're getting like that very first bit of like as cold as it gets rain. But beyond that, not much different. We're just dreary. The sun did not shine at all today.
Yeah. I had a moment at work today because I just happened to check the weather. I was like going to check the weather, make sure like I packed appropriately. And I found out that it is going to be 70 degrees down here back home for the entire time that I'm up in India. I was like, oh, well, let me check the weather in Indianapolis to see what I'm going to be dealing with. And it's not going to be, I mean, it's going to get to 70 degrees on Friday and Saturday, but like it'll be raining. Like, I don't want to, I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't think I'm ready for Midwest weather, I think is the conclusion I drew when I checked the weather today.
I promise you that the Midwesterners are not ready for the Midwest weather.
Oh,
like we had a recent bit where it was like 70 and then it was in the teens the next day. That's the energy we're on until probably May.
Got you. Okay. I think I need to repack my bag.
Pack both things.
I think I need to repack my bag.
Both.
All right. Dan and I, as I mentioned, we're going to be at the Big Ten tournament. Big Ten tournament this year starts on Wednesday, and we are very excited. We're going to be talking, we hate to say this, but we're going to be talking all things Big Ten tournament. We're going to talk about the teams we think are most likely to beat UCLA, who went undefeated this season in conference play. We're going to be talking about bigs and guards that we think need a little bit more love. We'll be showing love to a couple teams. Going to make some Sweet 16 predictions, even maybe. Dan's going to do his thing, show some love to Illinois. I'm going to do my thing, show some love to Maryland. And of course, we have to settle this debate. We have to settle the Big Ten versus SEC debate. We're going to do all of that, and we're going to do it as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So please, please, please stay tuned, stay locked in, stay tapped in, join the comments, join the conversation, because Protect Our Queens starts now.
Protect our queens.
Do you practice this? Was this spur of the moment?
They put the ether beat on this.
I started paying attention to women's basketball in a way that I never had before.
In and out, crossover, she has all that in her bag.
I just think that Paige is more well-rounded on both sides of the ball.
It's all about her feel for the game, bro.
All of these girls seem like a WA guy that got a turnaround fade in the paint.
We don't need 7 games. We didn't need 6 games. We didn't need 5 games. 4.
This 4 means so much more, if Maryland was a top 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. But unfortunately, that is not the case. But we know who is a top 4 seed in the tournament this year, and that is the UCLA Bruins. They finished conference play undefeated, a perfect 18-0. They claimed the regular season Big Ten championship, and now, of course, they're on a mission to claim the Big Ten tournament championship. But as always, when you're dealing with undefeated teams, right, the conversation has to come up. Who's most likely to beat UCLA in the Big Ten? So, Dano, the floor is yours. Who do you think? What teams do you have pegged as most likely to knock off the Bruins in the Big Ten tournament?
So, this does not necessarily mean these are the only teams, but we think these are the most likely teams, correct?
Yes.
It begins most prominently with the Michigan Wolverines for me. The continuity is there way more than you might anticipate for a team that is the age that they are, because they are sophomore laden, but they are some of the best sophomores in all of basketball. We're talking about Olivia Olson. We're talking about Silas Swords. We're talking about Mila Holloway. We're talking about Tiala DeFoss. Depth, size, physicality, but the thing that I picked up when I actually watched them in Ann Arbor earlier this year is the engagement level. Now, they've had games where it didn't work out that way, but Michigan has games where, regardless of if their shots are falling or not, their execution offensively and defensively is high level and physical for the entirety of the game. So if they throw their fastball, which would be the effort that I see sustained most of the time, and then they have their effectiveness, they are a team that is not just a could beat UCLA. It's a Final Four caliber team at its peak.
I would agree. I mean, UCLA, their toughest Big Ten game was against Michigan. It was the smallest margin of error or smallest margin of victory that was a 3-point game. And when I look at the Michigan team, and I had the pleasure of watching them on MLK Day at the Coretta Scott King Classic, you know, and we're going to talk about it in a second, there are a lot of really good guards in the country. Most of them are housed in the Big Ten, right? But Olivia Olson and Silas Swords, I mean, as you mentioned, right, like 2 freshmen that are leading this team. I mean, after that game on MLK Day, I had the pleasure of talking to Kim Barnes-Rico again for the second time in Olivia and Silas' career. And when they were freshmen, they came here, they played Maryland, they won that game. And I had asked Coach Rico, then I said, you know, like, where are we at with Sila and Olivia at this point? And she flat out said, like, she thought that they were 2 of not even the best freshmen in the country back then. She thought they were 2 of the best players in the country. Right? And she's echoed those same sentiments up to this point. And the beautiful thing about the matchup, I think, between Michigan and UCLA is they each do 2 things very well that oppose each other, right? UCLA is a really physical team. Not that Michigan's not, but they're a really physical team, and they're led by, obviously, their 6'6" center in Lauren Betts, right? And when you have that size advantage, they do what they're supposed to, which is feed the ball to Lauren Betts and almost kind of get out of that way. Like we see Gabriela Jaquez do some things. We've seen Gianna Neepkins kind of kick it up a couple times. We've obviously seen Kiki Rice be effective. I wouldn't necessarily say that Kiki Rice has had like a signature game yet this season, but she does what she needs to do as the point guard and kind of feed those around her. But Olivia Olson and Silas Swords are, by my estimation, when it comes to scorers in the Big Ten and perimeter threats in the Big Ten, they're 2 of the best there is, and they're probably the 2 best in the conference. And my main concern for UCLA in a matchup against Michigan, which echoes my concern coming out of their game early this season, which is I don't know if UCLA's guards defensively or offensively are going to be able to keep up with Olivia Olson and Silas Swords. In that game on MLK Day, that Michigan game, when they played Vanderbilt, I believe it was, they came out of that second half, they were down big. Like they were down almost 20 points. And in the third quarter, I watched Silas Swords go on a Caitlin Clark-like run. Like she came down, hit a 3 on the wing, they get a stop, she comes down again, hits another 3 on the wing, and then comes down again. And on that same corner, does like a crossover into a step back 3 that almost goes in. And like, the crowd was ready to erupt. Like it felt like what it feels like when we watched Caitlin Clark hit 3 straight bombs against the New York Liberty, her first game back from injury last year. That's kind of what that felt like. And the lethality of, I don't know it's a word, but the lethality of Olivia Olson, but especially Silas Swords, as 3-point threats, as perimeter scorers this early in their career, is we've seen cause so many problems for teams over and over again. And I think that is the matchup that I mean, everyone has earmarked again because it was the tightest game of them all, right? Michigan is a 3 seed. UCLA obviously is the 1 seed. So like these 2 teams won't even see each other until the Big Ten championship game if they do play. And what a great game that would be to kind of go.
Yes.
But to your point about the physicality, like that Maryland game, even against UCLA a couple weeks ago, like that game started off very, very, that was not a blowout from top to bottom. That first half was very, very tightly contested because Maryland is able to play a physical style of basketball.
Yep.
I think where we saw Maryland kind of fall behind, whereas Michigan was able to keep up and keep it tight, is the half-court offense, right? The ability to keep the ball moving, the ability to find a shot, the ability to get your offense from not just one specific person, but 2, maybe even 3 different players moving around and change up the looks. And Michigan's ability to change up the looks, I think, is what's going to give UCLA their toughest matchup, assuming we see them play each other before the weekend is over.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that could be said about Michigan, but how would I put this? I think their floor is lower than UCLA's. I think their ceiling is not that much lower. Now, the difference between those two teams is that UCLA, aside from the Texas game, has stayed at their ceiling for much of the season. So I think if they play 10 times, UCLA is winning at least 7, but that's not the name of the game in college basketball.
Right. Yeah. I would agree. I would also say too, Ohio State's another team that I think can give UCLA some trouble because they have a player that at the very least can on defense mitigate Lauren Betts. I was trying to use my words wisely because I don't think there's a team in the Big Ten that can stop Lauren Betts.
Mm-hmm.
There are several teams in other conferences that can, but I don't think there's a team in the Big Ten that can completely stop Lauren Betts. But Elsa Lamilla is, I think, going to be a player that is going to be asked to do a lot in a potential Ohio State-UCLA matchup. Because, again, I think for all the reasons why I think Michigan can beat UCLA, I think Ohio State can beat Michigan State. The only difference, or can beat UCLA. The only difference is Ohio State has a player that is about the same size, if not very close to Lauren Betts, where if you can throw a body on her and make it tough. Lauren Betts, for all rates and all the things she does well, there's not very much to Lauren Betts' game off the block, out of the paint, in the mid-range area. She's not a player that you're consistently seeing take mid-range shots. She's not a player that you're consistently seeing take opposing defenders off the dribble, right? Like, we're not looking, like, you're not getting that from, it's a lot of, entry passes from the high post or low post, couple dribbles, turn around, lay it up, you know what I mean? Maybe a little bit of face up, but there's not a lot to her game. And for a player like Elsa, who is not a highly touted defender by any stretch of the imagination, like if the task is just stay in front of Lauren Betts, put your arms up, don't foul, Elsa can do that very well. So Elsa did a good job of that against TCU on MLK Day, and we've seen it a couple different times in some tough matchups. And I think, again, we talk about some of the best guards in the country, especially in the Big Ten. That conversation has to include a Jelani Cambridge, right? That conversation has to include a Chance Gray. So Ohio State has guards who can give UCLA problems offensively. They also have a big that they can trust at this point in the season to just don't foul, arms straight up, stay in front of Lauren Betts, you're good. I think that's another team that could cause UCLA some problems in the tournament.
So the spoiler alert is that Marcus and I had 2 of the same teams of the 3 that we selected. So I believe that Ohio State, not just because they held the margin to 7 points when they played earlier this year at Columbus, but because from a personnel standpoint, like you said, Limula is going to be a look that they can throw at Lauren Betts.
Yes.
The thing you have to decide with Lauren Betts is, are we going to collapse and be in rotation, or are we going to single cover and let her cook and try to limit her in that capacity? So I think that's something that Ohio State at least has one member of the personnel that could allow them to give that single coverage look for part of the game. Now, Lauren might still just do a couple of simple post moves and make it hell. The thing that I'm really impressed by her is she's so used to these hard doubles, and she's got such a ridiculous supporting cast that team, if they get you in rotation, their half-court offensive execution, it's just, between Neepkins and Rice, my goodness, like, there's just so many different ways you can go. Even Gabriela Jaquez is someone who's shooting a career high from three-point percentage this year. So, yes, from a guard standpoint, the one name I want to bring up is Kennedy Cambridge. So I believe this is the half-sister of Jelani Cambridge, and she is such a disruptor defensively. I think between Jelani and Kennedy, they averaged this season somewhere in the realm of like 6 to 7 steals a game combined. Kennedy almost 4 a game, Jelani a little over 2.
Yeah.
And when you talk about earlier this season, a player who I think is first team All-America caliber, I think that's Jelani Cambridge.
Absolutely.
I think, and you might think, oh, the arrival is too soon. Look, man, you're talking about the unassailable best player on a team that is right on the edge of potentially hosting, right?
Yep.
And I have not seen her 3-point touch is not hyper efficient, but she scores at all 3 levels, and her speed point A to point B, her shiftiness, it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jelani is impressive. I mean, and to be, like you mentioned, the unassailable best player on a team like Ohio State is asking a lot, especially because like Ohio State is a team that if you looked up based on how they played this season, like if you looked up and saw them in a Sweet 16, maybe even an Elite 8, right? You wouldn't be too surprised because of how that, and that's how good Jelani Cambridge is. That's also just how good they're coached, right? Like they had a stretch, I believe it was 3 or 4 games this season when they went into the fourth quarter either down or tied and ended up winning those games by double digits. 2 of those games were against Maryland and against TCU. Like this is a team that does not give up. And with the way that Chance Gray has come on down the stretch of this season of just like really stepping up and really being like that one, like that second option, not I want to say second fiddle because she is older, but like that second fiddle, if you will, to Jelani Cambridge, being able to take over when Jelani's not having a great game offensively, being able to fill in those gaps even on defense when like Kennedy's out, or being able to support offensively as a facilitator when Jelani's out. Like the 3 of them together, both Kennedy, Jelani, and of course Chance, like the 3 of them together, I think one of the most, if not the most underrated guard trio in the country, because they're not like all 3. Like if this isn't like Michaela Williams, Flower J. Johnson, and Mylasia, like they're all highly touted. They're all very dynamic guards. They're all household names, and they're all amongst the best player in the country. Like that's not like this isn't that, right? This is just Jelani Cambridge, who's a really good, really dynamic, elite young guard, and 2 other guards in Kennedy and Chance who are just as good at what they do well, and they all just complement each other really well and able to play off each other really well. And again, like Chance being that glue between the 3 of them to where she's able to obviously complement both of them, but also complement one or the other when either Cambridge sisters off the floor to keep the offense moving, to keep the offense still fluid and be able to do the things they need to do. It's what's most impressive with me about Chance. I think Ohio State, again, like that's another team where they won't now. They would likely see Ohio State and UCLA could play as early as the semifinals. That is the only time we get to see them play. So like that is a matchup where if Ohio State's going to win a Big Ten championship, that would mean that they beat UCLA. And that means a lot for them, not just in the context of the Big Ten, but also in the context of March Madness. We're talking about, like you're saying, a team that is, as it stands right now today, currently scheduled to host in the first round and the second round of the tournament.
So, and the other thing to keep in mind before we hit a couple of other teams here is for the teams that start on Wednesday, they would have to win 5 games in 5 days to win the tournament. The teams that start on Thursday, 4 games in 4 days. The teams with the double byes, which would be the top 4, which would include UCLA, Michigan. Is Ohio State in there too?
No, Michigan has a single bye. Or I'm sorry, Ohio State has a single bye. Top 4 seeds are in order: UCLA, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota.
So put it like this: is there are so many different nuances to the way in which this tournament breakdown impacts teams.
Yeah.
If you're the double bye team and the team you're facing is coming in off of a really excellent performance, it might be one day prep for them, but they might be in a position where they're vibing and they're on a roll, and you don't want to see that team that got to play a day before you played. So just because UCLA was dominant does not mean they can't lose. Because they lose does not mean that they won't be dominant in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. This is a really freaking good conference.
It is. It's a really, really, really good conference. So we both have 3 teams. Dan mentioned obviously like Michigan and Ohio State were both our commonalities, but Dan, who's that 3rd team for you that you think can beat UCLA?
I'll hit this quick just so that we can, keep it moving. Minnesota is the one for me. Watching them, watching them in person from courtside on Sunday. Obviously, this is recency bias, but they are big
Yeah.
They're physical and they just execute the hell out of people. So, like, if you want to get to a spot against Minnesota, you have to work to get there. The reasons why teams like Michigan and UCLA and Iowa would be okay to challenge that is because those teams execute remarkably well. But it's going to take the work. And I watched in the first quarter against Illinois, Minnesota scored 22 points. All 22 of those points were in the paint.
Wow. I don't think it's any more impressive than that, actually.
By the end of the first half, it was 36-29, and Minnesota had scored 30 of their 36 in the paint. So if you want to talk about a team that they have 5 scorers in double figures, they have 5 players that average more than 2 assists a game, they've got 5 seniors in their rotation, that's a team that is prepared to potentially take a run if, they can get you off balance. And they will do that both offensively and defensively with their physicality. And it'll be physicality that'll piss your fan base off because, they're fouling. Look, man, like I was in an arena where they were pissed off at the Minnesota team getting all of these, favorable calls. It's because they assert their physicality and get you on your heels.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is important when you're talking about a team like UCLA that has the presence that they have in the paint of Lauren Betts. Maryland.
Yep.
I don't want to be accused for being biased or a little bit of home cooking here, but over the last couple of years, it's not often that we've seen a Brenda Frese coached team lose to the same team in the same season twice. That's not often that it's happened. And we can start with this year. They lost a tough one at home to Ohio State. A couple months later, they went into the Buckeyes building and they got the win. Right. We saw them a couple years ago. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Same thing. They lost to Penn State early in the season. They learned from it, bounced back. I think that game was at Penn State. They came home and beat Penn State. I think the only team that we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years beat Maryland twice in the same season was Indiana. And I believe that was either in 2024 or 2023. But it doesn't happen often. And that's just because Brenda Frese is a really good coach. And Brenda Frese coached teams do well at learning from their not making the same mistakes the second time around. I think what we saw in that first game against UCLA was a combination of 2 things. Number one, they were coming off of a really tough win against USC, a game that was really physical. And they go into that game against UCLA and they upheld the physicality in the first half. It was a pretty close game in the first half, but then they just got outdone and they got outwilled moving forward. They were without, I believe, Rainey Wilson did not play in that game or didn't play much in that game, and she's a very important role player for them. And it was just rough. They had been through going into that West Coast road trip. 3 of their 4 games going against that overtime, one of them was a double overtime game. So I'm not here to make excuses for Maryland. I'm just saying eventually all of those minutes, all of that lack of prep, the travel, all of that led to eventually just them falling apart in the second half of that game. They have since bounced back from that, and they have lost 1 game since then, if I'm not mistaken. So it has been a very, very great stretch for Maryland on the other side of that tough loss. And again, I think, not to give all of it away, because I am going to go a little bit deeper into Maryland later on, but there are things that Maryland does well, specifically on the defensive side of the basketball, that I think can cause UCLA some trouble. That starts with their press, which we have not seen a lot of lately, but I'm sure they will bring back for this tournament. That starts with their ability to switch defensively. They run 4 guard, 1 forward lineups all the time. And they often run 5 guard lineups. I don't think there's a team in the country that runs more 5 guard lineups than this Maryland Terps team. A part of that is out of necessity. A part of that is just because it works. And I would, if I were a betting man, which I mean, I am, I would assume that when Lauren Betts is not on the floor, that's when we're going to see those 5 guard lineups the most. So in other words, UCLA and Corey Close, they've got a decision to make. Either you keep Lauren Betts on the floor for 30, 36, maybe all 40 minutes and make sure that they don't get to play that small ball that they like to play, or you risk sitting Lauren Betts, Maryland going in with the 5 guard lineup and really causing some problems for your UCLA Bruins offensively and even defensively. So I think Maryland's got a real shot to get their win back. And if I'm not mistaken, same thing with Maryland, because they're on the bottom of the bracket. If Maryland and UCLA are playing together this weekend, it would be on Sunday in the Big Ten championship game because of how the bracket is set up. And that would be a pretty strong game and a very strong win for them going into the tournament if they were able to do that. Dan and I are going to take a quick break. We're going to hit the comments, and then we're going to shift gears a bit and talk more about the guards and the bigs specifically that we think can make an impact this weekend.
I'm Dan. I'm from Illinois, and I've got 4 daughters. We love women's sports, and we love it not as a side conversation, not as a trend, but as high quality basketball. And that's why I'm here with Basketball Society and Protect Our Queens. We're talking real analysis, real respect for the game, and conversations that display we are actually watching the basketball. If you love hoops the right way, subscribe to Basketball Society right now.
Couple comments. Pharaoh says Michigan has a shot. We agree. Jeremy, our guy, frequent watcher, Michigan. Oh, Iowa. We did not bring up Iowa. Michigan, Iowa, and Ohio State has a shot to beat UCLA. Biomicrobiology says UCLA's biggest test will come from outside the Big Ten. They'll get some tests outside of the Big Ten, but they're going to get some tests in this weekend for sure. I think they're going to see all of these teams best because they have the chart on their back. When you finish a conference play undefeated 18-0, you got the double bye. Yeah, you've got 3 games in 3 days, but these teams are going to be primed and ready to go. And you're going to be getting the best versions of these teams when they do finally see them. Jeremy also says UCLA is looked at as the automatic favorite in the Big Ten, and the only reason is because Juju's not playing. I have Michigan beating UCLA and winning the Big Ten. That's a bold prediction, and I wouldn't be surprised. Ohio State as well, the Cambridge girls and Chance Gray. Absolutely. So let's switch gears. Let's talk a little bit more about these guards. Because as I mentioned, there are a lot of good guards in the country. You've got your Easy Fuds, your Hannah Hidalgos, your Olivia Miles, your Michaela Blakes, National Player of the Year, Michaela Blakes, by the way. But there are a lot of really good guards in the Big Ten as well. Some of them you know, some of them you don't. So, Dan, who are some guards in the Big Ten that you think are going to leave the biggest marks on their tournament and on the tournament this week? And we'll just go one by one, back and forth.
The name that comes to mind first for me is Kennedy Blair for Michigan State. This is a special player, not just in terms of like what her performance on the court has been this year, but a little bit of like the narrative and story behind her is that she was a walk-on at Michigan State and earned a scholarship. I believe she was a transfer in, like she had intended to go to Bowling Green for the coach at Michigan State or something like that. And then there was some sort of like shift that occurred where the coach was going to end up at Michigan State, and she didn't get a scholarship offer, but just came and bet on herself. Listen to this. So her second year, she is averaging 14 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists on 50% shooting. When I saw her live against Illinois at East Lansing, she had a game where I believe it was 17, 10, and 7. And early in the game, she ripped one of the Illinois guards like in the backcourt and just put a layup in and kind of gave like one of these like talking about. And I was just like, what is this kid? Like, what kind of attitude is that? And then she proceeded to like be a dog for the entire game. So I strangely, when I watch Michigan State, I think they take a lot of their identity from it's like this is culturally ingrained into the Michigan State program, but a lot of their tenacity flows downhill from the tone that Kennedy Blair sets. And when you're 5'9" and you're averaging 7+ boards a game in one of the best conferences in all of college basketball, while still distributing on a really egalitarian system where a lot of players get in and play, that type of quantity and that type of grit that you see from her is just like the results show. And I would not be surprised if she's like on an all tournament team. And if Michigan State is one of these teams that gives absolute hell to a team that got a double bye, if they in fact make it past the Thursday game that they play.
Yeah. My first guard is Silas Swords. I talked about it earlier. She's been around 13 to 15 points per game this season. Again, one of the best scorers in the country, in my opinion, as a guard. There is not a lot of flash to her game necessarily. There's a lot of substance to her game. Her game is very simple. The way that she scores is very simple. She can score for a number of different spots, but I think the perimeter is where we're going to see her feast the most. And with a lot of these matchups where there is not a lot of perimeter resistance in some of the teams that she's potentially get from some of the teams that they're potentially going to see by the time we get to Friday, which is when their first game is, I think she's going to really show why head coach Kim Barnes-Rico thinks she's one of the best players in the country, not one of the best players in her class. The other thing too is she's a really good rebounder for her size. She's somewhere between like 4 to 6 rebounds a game, I think, last time I checked. And again, when they're going to be playing against teams like Maryland, who's one of the best rebounding teams in the country, UCLA, one of the best rebounding teams in the country, even a team like Iowa, who is quietly one of the best rebounding teams in the country, they're going to need their boards everywhere they can get, not just defensive rebounds, but offensive rebounds as well. And Siler Swords has no problem kind of getting in there. And then also, too, I mean, just her motor, like her ability to go 30, 32, 34, 36 minutes if need be, and just continuously be effective. And that doesn't always mean scoring. Sometimes that means passing. Sometimes that means defense. Just like doing what her team needs for them to be successful, and playing well off of Olivia Olson is a big part of that as well. Like knowing where she needs to be in order for Olivia to be successful is another very, very, very big part of that. So I expect Siler Swords to have a big game, and she can get it in spurts. Like you can look up and she's gone from 6 points to 15 by herself. She's gone on runs by herself several times this season. And her team knows when they need a shot to get the ball in her hands. And she knows when her team needs a shot or needs a score, needs the lid to be taken off the basket, that she's got to knock it down. And 9 times out of 10, she does. I think Siler Swords is going to have a massive impact on the Big Ten tournament this year. Another player that I think is going to have a pretty big impact, and this is a player who we won't have to wait until Friday to see, Savia Sellers. I had the pleasure of watching her up close and personal for the very first time when they were here playing Maryland. We went into the first half. She had 4 points.
You know, I
At
hear
the end of overtime, she had 36. And I don't know where they came from. I just looked up and she had 36. And it was so easy. And I think for me, the one thing I love about a lot of our Big Ten guards is it's all so easy. Like and I'm not saying that like there are guards out there who are trying too hard. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is like a lot of guards in the Big Ten, the game it's all in the flow of the game. It's all in the nature of the game, right? And there are so many gifted scorers in the Big Ten at the guard spot who I feel like don't get a lot of love. One, because of the team they play for, or two, just because Big Ten teams, I think for some reason, just aren't given the same love overall the way that we see like the SEC get love, right? Which we'll talk about later on. But Savia Sellers is, I think, I'm so excited to see her play. And if I'm not mistaken, they have a game. Their first game, I believe, is on Thursday, and they get USC. And I'm so very excited for that game because there's a lot of good guards in that those are on the floor. This would be her, Avery Howell, Jazzy Davidson, obviously. Like there's going to be a lot of talent at the guard spot in that game. But Sellers, by every stretch of the imagination, is, I think, for me, everything I love about a guard. She can pass, she can defend, she can score. And when she's scoring, she is scoring. Like there were a couple of possessions in that Maryland game where she's just bringing the ball to the floor and just pulling from the top of the key and knocking it down, right? Or the shot clock's dwindling down and she gets the ball back and she's hitting these shots and she can get it again from a variety of different spots. In that USC game, I think there are a lot of ways that USC can challenge Washington. But I definitely think Washington winning that, if Washington wins that game, it'll be because Savia Sellers has a really strong offensive performance. And that's generally been the trend for them this season. When she goes off, they look great. Their offense look great. State plays well. And Avery Howell is another one where she's not on my list. She's another one where I'm like, she can kind of impact games in ways outside of just scoring the basketball, which is a very, very underrated part of her game. But who's next on your list?
Let me go with, and I'm getting a little echo here, so I apologize about that. I'm going to go with Britt Prince. And this is a name that you might not see as heralded because Nebraska kind of struggled in the Big Ten for much of the latter half of the season, and they just got a big win on a last-second shot from Britt Prince at Washington recently.
Yep.
But Britt is, I believe she was a 4 or 5-star recruit who stayed home in Nebraska, but her numbers, 17, 4 and 4. Okay, like pretty good, right?
Yeah.
The shooting efficiency. 54, 46, 90. So, you watch her, she's so controlled. She is a table setter. She's kind of like, you've heard the old analogy about like, there are some people are the thermometer and some people are the thermostat.
Yeah.
I feel like she regulates their entire situation. And she is going to, I guess, at least from what I have seen of her performances this year, she's going to provide a baseline level of excellence that will keep Nebraska in a lot of games. So I would not want to be the team that has to face them on Thursday if they, in fact, make it out of what I believe is probably the 12-13 game is she's going to be in.
Yep, Nebraska, Indiana, that 12-13 game, they get Ohio State. So,
yeah.
We'll see. But probably would be exciting nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. So let me like just move on to one more really quickly.
Martin, shout out Agar Martin. So we're doing
is he up in here? Look,
54, 46, 90 is wild. That it is.
Could you imagine just like being 19 or 20 and being so good at
54, 40? That's almost 50, 50, 90. That's insane.
Yeah. Let me bring up someone who I just saw play a little while back, Kennedy Smith. Okay. I don't want to bring up Jelani again because we talked about her so much already.
Sure.
Kennedy Smith is one of these players that when you look at Kara Dunn, when you look at Jazzy Davidson, when you look at how Juju Watkins is going to be back again, you might go down the line and be like, well, what are you getting from Kennedy Smith? You're getting someone who's so good defensively. You're getting someone who's efficient with her stroke, but does not overpress for her places in the offense. When she came and played Illinois, again, a lot of this is going to be home cooking because we've seen these people live. I think she had 6 blocks in that game at the guard spot.
Okay.
So when I see players that kind of curate their game to what the game in front of them needs at a ridiculously high level, those are the type of players that I want to pay attention to and go, you know what? Don't forget about this one right here.
Yeah. Kennedy is – people don't talk about Kennedy enough. You are absolutely right, Martin. People do not talk about Kennedy enough. In biomicrobiology, it says Kennedy Smith is a defensive beast. The last name on my list is I talked about it earlier. I just got to show a little bit more love. Chance Gray. Chance Gray is shooting, I think, just under 40% from 3 this year.
But the volume.
I mean, she takes it like 7 or 8 a game. But what I found interesting is, I should have pulled the exact number. I should have wrote it down. But
I got you.
When Chance Gray makes at least 4 threes in a game, Ohio State's offensive rating is amongst the best in the country. Ohio State's offensive rating is already amongst the best in the country. And again, I should have wrote down the exact number, but like I've watched with my own 2 eyes, Chance Gray go on runs by herself. Like, and they're almost always just knocking down 3 after 3 after 3 after 3. Like her ability to get to her spots, whether it's off the ball or on the ball from 3 and knock those shots down consistently. I talked earlier about how like she compliments Jelani and Kennedy well. It's become like second nature at this point after having seen them play ball twice. Every time Jelani Cambridge drives and kicks to Chance Gray, I subtly roll my eyes because I know what's coming. And I know that there's nothing anyone in the arena can do to stop it. And Chance Gray's ability to always be ready, right? Because we've seen Jelani take over games and then still find Chance Gray and she can knock down a 3. We've seen Jelani not have a great game and Chance Gray still steps up and finds that shot. We've seen Jelani have a great game, and still we see Chance Gray have an equally as great game with what that means for her role. And this Ohio State team, as I mentioned earlier, these three guards are great, but just looking at their potential matchups, I mean, again, we're talking about Indiana or Nebraska, depending on who wins on Wednesday. They win their game on Thursday, they go on to take on Minnesota on Friday. If they should win that game, they get UCLA on Saturday. Like, they're going to need Chance Gray to be Chance Gray, to be that player that is always ready to knock down shots and be a threat on the perimeter, because her ability to be successful from the perimeter allows Jelani Cambridge to do what she needs to do inside the arc. And what we've seen a lot this season, as if Chance Gray's shot isn't really falling or if they're not really getting her involved, that's usually when we see Jelani struggle inside the arc. I think they're going to make sure that they get Chance Gray going early and often in all of these games. And it's going to be a sight to watch, because I think Chance Gray still, at this point in her career and at this point in the season, I still feel like she's not getting a lot of love. She's going to get a lot of love at the end of this week, no matter when Ohio State loses, if they lose at all this weekend.
I mean, the thing that's nice about that Ohio State roster, to circle back to them, is if you have three players in your rotation that could potentially carry you, like as the straw that stirs the drink, that's going to go a huge way, because you're going to need different people. Aside from a legendary run from one player, you need different players to carry you each game to get through a 4-day or 5-day gauntlet that is the Big Ten tournament.
Let's take another quick break, and we'll shift from guards to bigs and how they can impact the Big Ten tournament this year.
You know what? Every man that used to play basketball in high school that was decent, like every man's dream is to go to their nearest LA Fitness and ball out. Hit the game-winning shot, something. And you know what I do when I'm bored, when I'm like really tired, like when I'm chilling but relaxed, but I just want to look at some TikTok, I just want to scroll. I go pull up these girls that walk in random LA Fitnesses and be giving dudes that work. That twerk, walking and bodying dudes. Like, I'm like, yo, this is great. This is great entertainment. This is great entertainment. They go crazy. We got to protect our queens. We got to protect our queens. Give them they love. Give them they just do. You know how hard it is for a girl to walk into a LA Fitness full of dudes reliving a dream that has been deflated and cook them extra crispy? Yes, it takes skill. It takes candor. You know what I mean? Protect our queens. Shout out to Protect Our Queens podcast.
Again, if you are just joining us, we are doing a full preview of the Big Ten tournament ahead of the Big Ten tournament this week. We've talked about UCLA, who could beat them. We just got finished talking about guards. Now we're going to move inside the perimeter, into the paint, talk about the bigs. I don't know if she's on your list, but she was on my list, especially after watching Iowa play Maryland this year. Hannah Stuelke. I don't think enough has been said about Hannah Stuelke and the way that she has been able to not just evolve as a basketball player, but also the way that she's been able to showcase more of what she is capable of post Caitlin Clark, right? When Caitlin Clark was there, most of the things we saw from Hannah Stuelke was just obviously, I mean, living off of the gravity that is Caitlin Clark offensively, right? There were a lot of red runs, a lot of like duck into the paint. We saw a couple of slip screens, but post Caitlin Clark, we've seen her have a much more, I don't want to say she's been like the focal point of the offense, but she had a much larger impact, and she touches the ball every possession now on offense, more often than not, right? We're seeing a lot more of back to the basket. We're seeing a lot more of face up. We're seeing a lot more of her getting touches in the mid-range off the ISO. And Hannah Stuelke's ability to showcase and also just get better offensively and become more of a threat scoring the basketball, right, is, I think, something that as we kind of continue, especially by the time we get to Friday, she's going to cause, like you talked about earlier, a lot of these teams are going to feel good after 2 or 3 wins coming into Friday, depending on how things shake up. Hannah Stuelke can 100% halt all of that, all of it, be the sole reason why all the momentum just comes to a screeching halt, because she's going to make you work for it. And there are a number of teams, I think, that still are just not quite yet able to handle all that Hannah Stuelke brings. Like, I watched Hannah Stuelke versus Maryland. And again, like, Maryland has, I'm going to say issues, but there are other factors that go into why Maryland sometimes struggle against these teams that have really capable bigs. And a big part of it is because they only really have one or two bigs on the team. Truly, the rest of them are guards that kind of can play above their size and above their position. But Hannah Stuelke's ability to kind of give problems to a Sailor Poffenbarger, give problems to a Yarden Garzone, two guards who are long, who can defend, who are versatile, who should be able to handle the Hannah Stuelke matchup. And not to say that they were unable to handle the Hannah Stuelke matchup, but I think they just gave them a lot more. She gave them a lot more problems than I anticipated, and it made me realize I was unfamiliar truly with what Hannah Stuelke has become since Caitlin Clark has left. And I know that her front court mate is on your list, which I'm very excited for, but the two of them together, I think, is what makes the both of them individually that much greater. Of course, you have Chit Chat right out there who's really come on as a guard, but like just their ability even to play off of Chit Chat and do what they need to do to give her the space. Hannah Stuelke, I think, doesn't get a lot of love because I think when Caitlin was there, she was always just known as like the motor of the team, right? She could always go, and she was big on the defense, and she was big on the boards, and she is still all of those things. But offensively, we've seen her really blossom. And I think, again, like looking at the team, all the teams that could potentially play Iowa, I mean, we could see Iowa play against a Michigan State. They could play in Illinois. They could, and I think any four of those teams are going to want to make sure they're looking real close at Hannah Stuelke because she's maybe not undeniably their best player, but she's a player that you can look up and she can have had a very impactful game if you miss her for just a second.
I would say if I were to compare her to a player in the pros for people who are looking for a point of connection, she is like almost for her college team, like a supercharged who Naz Hillman is for the Atlanta Dream. She can distribute a little bit. She is so solid defensively. She's not the tallest big, but she's so strong and fast that like everything that she does is connective and additive. So if you were to look at like her impact on a game, it can sometimes look like distributing and post to post with Ava Hayden. Sometimes it can look like running high pick and roll. Sometimes it looks like just the stuff she did with Caitlin when she was rim running at a ridiculous clip. So no, that is one of my favorite players in the Big Ten.
Absolutely.
So let me give you a name that is a little bit unheralded, but the impact is going up at an exponential rate. It is Ahisa Tute. She plays for Oregon, okay? And I want to just give you a little bit of a breakdown on where she started this season and where things are headed. So the first 14 games of the year in non-con, she was not starting for Oregon, but she was really effective, and she was putting up 8.4 points and 7.4 rebounds. Pretty good for a sophomore. But again, coming off the bench, only playing, I believe, 18 minutes a game. When she got into conference play and they decided, you know what, this player is really good. Why don't we start her? She elevated up to, in her last, I believe, 15 or 16 games, it was 15.4 points per game and 9.9 rebounds per game. So you talk about a player whose production has elevated. You're talking about a player who, if she was getting the opportunities that she has this entire season, like for 15 games, she would be leading the Big Ten in rebounding right now. And she's physical. You hear me say that a lot, and I don't want to. I think what's more important than physical and vacuum is assertive. Are you going to play in a way that keeps people off balance? And that's what she does. She is going to make moves and get positioning in a way that makes you respond to her and not the opposite way around. And so, physicality, fine. But what we're really talking about is someone that does what she wants to do and makes you work off of what she's good at. I am excited to see her development as a player, whether or not that I have no intel on what her future looks like, but Oregon would be fortunate to get her junior and senior years. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, for sure. The only other player on my list I just wanted to talk about, mentioned her earlier, staying with Ohio State, Gosh, that's only the Ohio State fan that I hope the Maryland folks don't hate me. That's like the closest thing Maryland's got to a rivalry right now. But Elsa Lemula, the way that she is going to be impactful for Ohio State has nothing to do with the box score. You are not at any point this week going to look up and see a double-double from Elsa. You might not see a 10-point game from Elsa this week. Now, not because she's not capable of it, because that's not what she's there for. It's three things. It's her size, like I mentioned earlier, like her ability to kind of counteract the size of other teams, but also cause problems down low for teams who lack size is going to be very important. Her ability to alter shots is also going to be very important. Elsa has started a lot of breaks by altering shots. And when in her ability to grab the rebound and get the ball to Jelani, get the ball to Kennedy, get the ball to Chance, and then watch Ohio State get out on the fast break, right? But the third thing and the most important thing that I think that we're going to see be most impactful is her ability to play the pick and roll. Jelani, Kennedy, and Chance each bring something very different to the pick and roll offense as the ball handler, right? You look at Jelani, you have to not only respect her ability to drive, but you have to respect her ability to shoot because she can. You have to respect her ability to pass, right? Kennedy, you have to respect her ability to pass. You have to respect her ability to shoot. She's not going to take you off the dribble as much on the pick and roll, but she can. But Chance especially, you have to respect her ability to step back and hit a three or pass the ball. And Elsa's ability to and just IQ and awareness to know who her ball handler is on the pick and roll and what she needs to do for this pick and roll to work is, I think, the most underrated part of her game. Because no one ever anticipates her to pick and pop because that's not her game. It's always going to be a pick and roll, but she knows where to roll. She knows when to roll. She knows what space she needs to fill depending on who that ball handler is, but she's always ready. The hands are always ready. So no matter which one of those three guards it is, she is not afraid and not unable to catch the ball off the roll and lay it up. We've seen that. And against a team like a Maryland who lacks a true threat on the inside, love Izzy Mamadou, but Elsa's bigger than her, right? Yeah. Against a team even like an Iowa, we love Hannah, we love Ava, but they're not as big, not as long as Elsa. We're going to probably see a lot of those post-entry passes for her to just get an easy layup. And Elsa, too, she can draw a foul, bro.
Yes.
She can draw a foul. When I watched them play against TCU, the number of times she is the sole reason why Clara Silva and Marta Suarez were in foul trouble because they just didn't really know what to do with her. Not because she's doing a bunch of crazy, because she just knows how to position her body and draw a foul. And when you're playing up against teams in the Big Ten where most of whom don't have this dominant presence inside like a Lauren Betts, if you're getting your undersized bigs in foul trouble, that's only going to make it that much easier for Elsa. But of course, it's going to mean driving lanes going to be easier for Jelani, for Kennedy, for Chance. And that's really what you want to see, right? And so, again, it's not going to be a matter of what she does in the box score. It's going to be a matter of all the things she does that you don't see on the box score where she's going to impact the game. And I just think a lot more people are going to be put on to Elsa this week by how I think Ohio State does a great job of using her strengths on the basketball court to work in their favor and hide her weaknesses very, very well, because they are not asking her to do much of anything offensively, but that doesn't mean she's not capable of doing anything offensively.
Yeah, what's impressed me is her touch and her floor mapping, her basketball instincts. When she played at Illinois, I had to go back and look because I could remember being really impressed with her. She had only 5 points, but she had 4 assists. You get that from your 6'6" center who can also, she's been averaging since the new year, nearly 3 blocks a game. Come on now.
Yeah.
Come on. You need connective tissue to win. Let me just give a quick shout out to one other player, and I kind of want to round out our Michigan State talk with bringing up Grace Van Sluten. That is a player that has these stretches of engagement where I watch her and I go, oh, that's going to be a player that plays at the pro level at some point in time. She went out with some sort of shoulder separation injury at the game I watched in East Lansing, and the radical departure of their ability to get what they wanted on offense shifted as soon as she went off the floor. So she was going after offensive rebounds. She was able to be a connective passer. It kind of crazy. I want to say she played 1 year at Oregon, and now she's played 3 years at Michigan State. But this would be the end of her eligibility, and I just think her and Kennedy Blair could be a type of 1-2 punch that if their minutes go up a little bit from what they'd been playing throughout the season, they might be able to ride a little bit of a run into like the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament.
We're going to take another quick break, and on the other side of it, we're going to get into two teams that we think are absolutely underrated this week.
You know how I know you don't really love basketball? Because you're not subscribed to Basketball Society yet. We might be the only platform talking men's and women's hoops with the same energy. There's no agendas over here, just genuine hoops talk. From the Basketball Society podcast to Protect Our Queens, we've got it all. So to prove you really love this game, subscribe to Basketball Society now.
If you're not subscribed to Basketball Society already, I genuinely don't know what you're doing. And if you don't want to miss any of the Big Ten content that Dan and I are going to have for you for the rest of this week into the weekend, you should subscribe to Basketball Society. We've talked a lot about key players. We've talked obviously about teams that we think have what it takes to beat UCLA. But there's always, no matter the type of tournament, no matter the situation, there is always a team or two that can fly under the radar going in and wow a lot of people coming out of it. Who is one team, Dan, that you think has been unheralded coming into the Big Ten tournament this year?
USC. They've lost some games, but they are so much better than their win-loss record. They've lost some close games.
Yeah.
They are also a different team than where they were when they kind of started out the year in like that 2-3 ranking in bracketology. They took some losses. They're trying to get used to playing without like the sun and stars on their team. Okay. But Jazzy Davidson, aside from Jelani Cambridge, is the second best basketball player I've seen this entire year. Like in person.
Yeah.
She's 6'2", but she's a point guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
She protects the rim. She is in passing lanes. She is a distributor. She isn't particularly efficient from like the middle level of the floor, but if they need her to produce offense and get shots on goal, she can have stretches where she gets on fire there. And then you already heard us talk earlier about Kennedy Smith and what a defensive beast she is. You heard us talk about Kara Dunn a little bit too. I just think that the infrastructure from some past tournament runs is there from some of the supporting members of this roster. And they remind me, as a comparison, a little bit about what the Boston Celtics are in the NBA right now, where everyone was like, oh, no Jason Tatum, what's going to happen to them? And they're still looking like they're a team that's going to be like a 2 or 3 seed in the East. It's not exactly the same with USC, but I think of all the teams that are like not double bye or, like higher single bye, I think that they are a team that, like, if I looked up and they were in the Elite Eight, I would not be surprised because I believe in the infrastructure from a coaching standpoint, the skill level, and then they just have habits. They have winning habits that I think will afford them the ability to really put on and put the Big Ten and eventually the NCAA tournament on notice as well.
So, ironically, the team I think unheralded is the team they play on Thursday. It's Washington for a number of reasons. For starters, Washington is not a team that pops out at you by any stretch of the imagination. There is, and I mean this respectfully, there is nothing Washington does that is specifically unique to them that makes them particularly special or particularly different from any other team in the country that you think could go on a deep run in the tournament unexpectedly. And that's why I think they're unheralded. And that's why I think they could make some noise this week. They are a team that, number one, averages around 70 points per game. So, like, they're very comfortable in the murky, icky 61, 58, 67, 60. Like, those games that don't crack 70, they live. in those games, right? And it doesn't freak them out if they look up at any point in time and they're not putting out a lot offensively, because that's not really who they are. That's not who they are. And so when they're playing up against a team like an Ohio State, if they're playing up a team against maybe even a Maryland, if they're playing against a team like a UCLA and they're in that area, that's where they want to be. They want to be in a ball game that doesn't crack 70, because that's where they excel. Can they play in games that go over 70? They absolutely can. But if they're in a game that is sub 70 scoring, they like their chances, and more often than not, they're winning those games. So that's the offensive side of it, right? The defensive side of it is they're a really good defensive rebounding team. They don't, for a team that doesn't have a dominant presence inside, you're not just getting to the paint with ease against Washington. And the only team that we're probably going to see have much paint success against Washington this week, assuming they play them, is UCLA. But we're not seeing teams just drive to the paint and beat Washington repeatedly over the head inside the, like, they make you earn your points. You're going to get it from the perimeter. You're going to get it from the mid-range. You might get some shots here and there in the paint. It's bound to happen. It's basketball. But it's not, you're never going to look up really and see Washington have been completely dominated in the painted area. But the thing I love the most about them and what makes them so unheralded and why I think they could make some noise is they're able to adjust the way they play based on the matchup they're given, right? If they need their guards to go out there and be lethal scorers and create off the dribble and go get a shot, they can do that. If they need their team to really lock in defensively and crash the boards and win the rebounding battle, they can do that. If they need to go out there and excel in their half-court sets because the fast break offense isn't generating anything or they're not generating turnovers and it's just turned into a possession-by-possession game, they can do that. And if they need to go out there and be locked in late game, whether they're down or they're up and close out or come back, they can do that too. They're not blowing anybody out. They're not out here with players dropping 30 and 40 points left and right, right? And they're not even coached by a coach who has national recognition, but she's a really good coach and she knows what she wants out of her players and she puts her players in a position to be successful. And the amalgamation of all of those things is what makes Washington, despite them being, I believe, the 9 seed in the tournament this year, a team that I think can make some noise. And I think that's why this matchup against USC on Thursday is going to be really, really exciting, because it's a perfect clash of styles between the two of them.
What stinks for that matchup, and this is life in the Big Ten, is, and we'll talk about this later, I think the Big Ten, where its strength lies, is that all the way up to about 12 in the conference are teams that are just good. Okay. We're not saying Final Four caliber, but imagine just having a 12-game stretch of a season where you had to play a team that could beat any team in the conference. And I don't know if you just heard that scream, that would be my children who have just arrived back home. We aren't new to this. We're true to this. But no, I'm just going to pretend as if I didn't lose my train of thought. When
we're talking about how you were talking about the mid-level teams in the Big Ten and how tough.
Yeah, I mean, look. Every night sucks if you're looking for an off night, and I'm not saying that that's not the case in the SEC. I just think the particular level that seeds 5 through 12 is at. I would put 5 through 12 in the Big Ten up against any other 5 to 12, certainly against the SEC.
That's fair. That's fair. In fact, let's take one more quick break and we will close out the night talking about the Big Ten SEC conversation that has gained some heat, gained some steam these past couple of weeks.
Shout out to Basketball Society YouTube, Protect Our Queens podcast, man. I want to talk about our female collegiate athletes. They not getting enough love, but we're going to give it to them here, okay? Juju Watkins, where do I begin? What a hooper. She play like a dude. Straight up. You know what I mean? Nothing against her in the gender thing, but that's just how she hoop. Well skilled. She got all the awards. She will be back next year. Be prepared for that, okay? Her relationship with Jaden Daniels, let's talk about it. They a little too in love. You know what I mean? One get hurt, the other get hurt. That's a problem. Did you know her real name was Judea? We got to put the parents through some sort of test before they start naming the kids. You can't just name your kid Judea Skies. That's her name, Judea Skies. We got to call her Juju.
Dan Martin has a question for you, and we hope not to get you in trouble. Every night sucks. Is that you describing Big Ten play or the chaos of having 3 games?
Well, it's 4, so I don't technically have to answer Martin's question.
Look at that. Look at that. Saved by the technicalities. We will take it. So, yes, Dan and I have both talked a lot about the Big Ten. Obviously, this is the Big Ten tournament preview show, but it should be on the record that I am officially a South Carolina Gamecocks fan. That is officially.
Where are you from?
I'm from DC. Asia Wilson's the reason why I love women's basketball. So it's Asia. It's Asia. I'm a Gamecocks fan. I'm an Aces fan. It's all Asia. I do love the Mystics. I do love Maryland, truly.
Yep.
As long as they're not playing the Aces.
And it's fair. It's fair. By the way, let's normalize just liking good
absolutely
teams.
Of course.
Sorry. I enjoy watching the Las Vegas Aces. Oh.
Martin will tell you last year when I'll never forget this. When South Carolina had to play Maryland in the tournament last year, that was not a good night. Because I wanted it to end in a tie. I'll be honest. Like, I mean, I didn't. I wanted South Carolina to win because we were defending champs at the time. But I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't know what to do. And like down the stretch of the game was really, really tight. I'm like texting Martin, and he's like, bro, like just watch the game. Like, I'm good. Like, you give all your energy to I was stressed. I left work late that night because I didn't want to get in an Uber or get on the bus and train until the game was over. I don't think I got home till like 10 o'clock that night, but I couldn't move until I was done. I told everyone at work, I was like, look, South Carolina and Maryland play at 7 o'clock. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me because I'm going to be very locked in on what's happening up here on my phone. Just, we're good. Should I have said that? No, but I did. And that's okay. It's okay. It is what it is. I don't work anymore. They're doing great things. I'm doing great things. It's fine. I was stressed though. I was stressed. So
yeah,
SEC. Which conference is the better conference? Do you think?
I think this is my cop-out answer. I think that the top of the SEC is clearly better than the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is deeper on the whole, but then it's just like a matter of what you value, right? Like LSU, Vanderbilt, South Carolina. Who am I missing? I mean, Mississippi gets up in there. Like the top level is unassailable. I think you're going to see UCLA give any of those teams hell if they have a chance. A lot of people are down on them because there's some things that get said about Lauren Betts where I'm just like, I don't think she's trying to be something that she isn't.
Sure.
I think she is the player who she is. But I think that if you value the very top of the conference, you will land on thinking the SEC is better. I think if you value, like, I would say it's very clear that the top 12 teams in the Big Ten are tournament teams to me. Sure.
So I actually think the same thing about the SEC. I think the reason why we don't view the middle, so like once you get past the top 4 teams in the conference, I feel like the reason why we don't view the same, like those 5 to 12 teams in the SEC the same way about the Big Ten is because number one, the top 4 teams in the SEC, really, there are 2 teams in the SEC that get all the SEC recruits. South Carolina and LSU. Right? Texas has kind of come up there a bit, but really,
how did I not say Texas? I'm still getting used to it.
But it's really, you're right, because they're formerly a Big 12 team. But like, it's really South Carolina and LSU. Like, that's where most of the talent goes. You get you get a couple of different players that go outside of there for various reasons, mainly because they want to go somewhere else and beat one of those 2 teams. Makes perfect sense. But like, you look at like that middle of the pack, right? Like, that's a strong group. You got Oklahoma. Tennessee has been weird this year, but like a good team, right? Ole Miss is a 20-win team this year. Georgia's a 20-win team this year. Kentucky's a 20-win team this year. Alabama is a 20-win team this year. Texas A&M is 14-11, but like, they're a pretty tough team. There's a lot of well-coached teams in that 5, a lot of really talented players. I think the thing that differentiates the SEC from the Big Ten is if you take any 1, 2 of those 5 to 12 in the SEC and you put them in the Big Ten. You put them in the ACC. You put them in the Big 12. You put them in Big East. Any of these other conferences, they would be viewed as elite teams in those conferences and conference championship contenders. Like if I took Ole Miss, for example, or if I took Georgia and say, you know what, for 1 year, you guys are going to play in or the ACC. And we looked up at the end of the year, and either of those teams either won the regular season conference championship or one of the last 4 teams left in the conference championship tournament, I don't think anyone would be surprised. Now, at least in the case of maybe the ACC or the Big 12 or maybe even the Big East, you might say, well, those teams, those conferences aren't as strong as the SEC. But I would counter to that point by saying the ACC quietly a lot better than people give them credit for. Like Duke, really good program. Louisville, really good program. NC State, really good program, right? Same thing with the Big 12. TCU, Baylor, West Virginia. Like there's good programs across the country, obviously. I think the other thing that separates the SEC teams from the Big Ten, and I think the reason why the SEC is better is because, and this is kind of like the college football thing, which is ironic that Coach Yo said it, the SEC is the only conference in women's basketball where losing to another SEC team is viewed as a bad thing. Like in the Big Ten, right? If a Big Ten team loses to another Big Ten team, I'm sorry, where it's not viewed as a bad thing, right? Like if we looked up at the end of the tournament and we said UCLA lost in the Big Ten tournament and they lost their first game and they lost to Washington or USC, or they lost to Ohio State, you're like, oh, that's not good. They're UCLA. They're supposed to win that game, right? But if we looked up for some reason and we'll just say Ole Miss beat Texas, or Ole Miss beat Vanderbilt, we'd be like, Vanderbilt's a really good team, but Ole Miss is a really good team as well, right? And I feel like that is kind of like the separator is for the Big Ten. If you're at the top of the Big Ten, you can't really lose to a non-elite Big Ten team this time of year and still be viewed the same going into the tournament. SEC teams can lose to each other's all the time, and it's not viewed that way. And I think that's because we all recognize that the SEC is the best team, the best conference in the country.
So this is maybe that's like public perception, but I just don't think it accords with the data anymore. And so when I watch Big Ten teams, even if I'm just like looking at the net comprehensive rating, like let me just run through this right now. UCLA 2nd, Michigan 6th, Minnesota 8th, Iowa 9th, Michigan State 15th, Ohio State 17th, USC 22nd, Nebraska 25th, Oregon 26th, Washington 27th. So like I think any team in the top 12 of the Big Ten can beat any team in the Big Ten. And I don't think that's
any team in the top 12 of the Big Ten can beat any team in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but and to that mark, like UCLA is having a season that is an outlier, right? So they lost one game to Texas, and that would be a mark where you could go, hey, look way back in non-con at this at this tournament where Texas beat UCLA, knock on the Big Ten. That's fair. Like I'm not going to say that there isn't a very strong and compelling argument for the SEC. Yeah. I personally do not think that you drop a middle tier team from either of these conferences into the other one. I think that it would be pretty similar in result for those teams in terms of like where they came out in the wash. The big difference is like I just think that a lot of these mid-tier Big Ten teams could perform very well against, however, like in the non-top 4 of the SEC. I could see a Big Ten team knocking off 10-plus wins pretty easily, but then struggling against like LSU, struggling against Texas, struggling against South Carolina. I don't think you're just dropping like Kentucky in the Big Ten, and they're a 3 seed.
I think you could.
I
think that has more to do with.
You like think that I just disagree because I think that these teams are too good.
That's fair.
And I guess the thing that I also have noticed too, when I do my research on the SEC,
Mhm.
watch a lot of games where one of the things that's underrated about the Big Ten is the environmental buy-in for women's basketball. Like
Mhm.
if you go to Lansing, you're going to go into there and they're going to close the curtains on the top deck, but they're going to have both the middle and the lower deck completely filled out.
Yeah.
Like in Illinois yesterday, I had like 6,000 people present for that game against Minnesota. You go to Indiana, my goodness, it's going to be packed there. Even at Purdue was relatively. Iowa's a different story altogether. I mean, when I was there, and this was like a little bit of a healthy pushback to some of like the negativity I've felt toward Iowa fans from time to time.
Yeah.
There were like dozens of people they went through and said, "Who's been a season ticket holder for 30 years?" There were like 100 people who stood up.
Oh wow.
And they said for 20 years, and then there was more people that stood up 5 years. So there were plenty of people that predated that whole, thing that we did. And I see that even when I went to the Nebraska game, it was 2 degrees outside that day, and they had over 5,000 people in that stadium watching women's basketball on a Saturday. So maybe I'm not arguing. I'm more devil's advocating than assertively saying the Big Ten is better than the SEC. I don't think any reasonable person can say that. I think it is, if in my true heart of hearts, I would say it is like 1A and 1B is the way I see it right now.
I think
you don't have to agree with that, but that's
no. I do agree with you. I would say I would agree with you. The point, like I think the one area where I think you could say the Big Ten definitively has the SEC beat is the parity in talent. All the talent in the Big Ten is not going to 1 or 2 spots, right? That is partially because 4 of the schools in the Big Ten aren't even on this side of the country. So like that does play a part of it, right? Like you got 4 schools from all the way over there. I do get that part of it. But like even if you look at the schools that are kind of close together, right? Like they're all kind of both the Big Ten. I mean, a lot of schools do this, but both the Big Ten and the SEC, I will say, they both do all programs in both conferences do a very good job of targeting their home base first. Like the number of players at Maryland that play in Maryland is great. Like there are, I think, half the roster is from Maryland. Taylor Poffenbarger's from here. Kendall Walker's from here. There's 1 or 2 other. Mir McLean is from here. Bree McDaniel, I think, is from here as well. She just hasn't been playing. Kayleen Smykel's from right up 95, Jersey, right? Alucia Connell is from Boston. She transferred in, right? Like there are a lot of players that are just from this area. And I know that to be true across all Big Ten schools. And the same can be said for the SEC, right? I think, and the reason why I do think you could take a mid-tier team and from the SEC and like put them in the Big Ten and they could probably crack the top 4 has a lot more to do with coaching than talent. I think coaching wise. And so I saw like Kentucky, for example, probably isn't the best example because Kentucky's coached by like Kenny Brooks is a damn good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
You can take Kentucky, you could put them in, I would say, any conference and they would be still just as good, maybe a little bit better than they are just because they're coached really well. They have the talent, right? The SEC, I think the one differentiating factor with the SEC as it relates to the Big Ten is I think the SEC style of basketball is easily transferable as well because of the way that most SEC rosters are constructed. Most SEC rosters are constructed inside out. I feel like most Big Ten rosters are constructed outside in.
No, that's a fair.
And that is another reason why I think if you take a team that is constructed from the paint outwards and put them in a conference of teams where they're constructed outside in, like something has to give. And I think what makes UCLA's season this year so special, what we've seen from them is UCLA has a 6-6 matchup disadvantage in Lauren Betts that most Big Ten schools just don't have an answer for.
No.
And the only Big Ten school that we saw have an answer for them was USC last season. And that's because of the generational talent that is Juju Watkins. Right? So, like, that's the – it does. You're right. Kiki Iriafen also does help with that. Like, that, I think, is the difference. And that's why I think a lot of people look at UCLA and like, oh, they're going to run with the Big Ten. It's not just that there's no true, like, obstacle for Lauren Betts in the post. It's also one, maybe two teams in the Big Ten have a player, a guard specifically on the perimeter who is capable of even getting to like 2 levels below what Juju Watkins is able to do as far as like going nuclear. Whereas you look at the SEC, not only do you have players in the SEC who are capable of going nuclear, but those players also have a big or two on their roster that can help support that. And I think that's the difference. But I do agree with you. Like, this is a 1A, 1B conversation. What I will tell you is, if you ever want to put someone on to women's college basketball, have them watch a Big Ten versus SEC team play basketball. And that's the best way. That's the best way to do it. I always tell people, if you want to put someone on a wrestling, turn on any Shawn Michaels match and have at it. You want to put someone on to women's college basketball, find a game when a Big Ten team played an SEC team, and that's magic.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. I don't know why I was doing this. So
were you playing this?
And I still can't hear you.
Oh no, that's not good. I think Dan is having technical difficulties, you guys. Well, we made it to the end of the show with Dan having technical with it before Dan had some technical difficulties. So I guess that is a good thing. We do want to get him back in here though before we close out. But we appreciate you guys for tapping in with us over the course of this episode. He's done. We appreciate you guys for tapping in with us over the course of this episode. If you are not already, please make sure you are subscribed to Basketball Society so you don't miss any future episodes of the Protect Our Queens podcast. Again, Dan and I are going to be booked and busy this week at the Big Ten tournament from start to finish. There may even be a couple of surprise episodes of just some reactions, especially as we get closer to crowning a Big Ten champion on Sunday. So again, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow Dan on Threads at Doctor. He's not really a doctor, but Dr.Thompson. Make sure you follow Protect Our Queens on Threads and Instagram at @ProtectOurQueens_. We appreciate the love and the support as we continue on this women's basketball journey, not just to crown, there he is, not just a Big Ten champion, but ultimately to crown a national champion and then hopefully a WNBA champion before the year is over. So for my guy, Dan Thompson, I am Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. And as always, you enjoy yourself some Big Ten basketball.